today's topic is reconciling faith and reason. It's a very challenging topic. Faith corresponds to religious tradition, and reason is more or less synonymous with modern scientific inquiry. The rationalists argue that truth should be determined by reason and factual analysis. Anything that could not be proved in the laboratory of science and technology, anything which cannot answer the questions raised by reason, has no legitimacy. That is the view of those who hold the school of rationalism as a system of thoughts. Faith, sometimes called fideism, means that is reliance on faith alone rather than reason or philosophical analysis, especially in matters related to religion. It's called fideism. You don't care whether reason or science can prove what you believe in. Faith is necessary, and beliefs may be held without evidence of reason, even in conflict with the evidence of reason. This is called the school of fideism. Now, our subject is how to reconcile, how to bring about a reconciliation between these two opposite streams of thoughts. This has been discussed for almost 2,400 years. I'm just talking about the recorded history, right from maybe a little more, because from the rational analysis of the legitimacy of faith really started in almost 9th century. There were two schools of thought, mainstream schools of thought. They were called Charvakas, they were Indian materialists. These views were later found in the works of Thales, and even in the conversations, dialogues described by Plato, the earlier dialogues, which reflect the views of Socrates by Plato, and also in Xenophon's Memorabilia. You find they reflect the thought currents of Socrates, who used to ask question, why it is so? Why should you believe that? But Socrates were not materialists in the sense their predecessors, the Indian Charvakas, Indian materialists were. They had two distinct branches of thought. In fact, in Sanskrit it's called Swabhavavada, and other one is called Nirnimittavada. In English we can say one was naturalism. Everything in this world happens, takes place as part of inexplicable nature in its process or evolution. You can't ask a question as to what is the cause behind. There is no question of tracing the effect to its cause. Everything is natural. Sometimes they were called Destinians. Everything takes place by destiny, by fate. So you live in the present only. There is neither past nor future. There is no cause-effect relationship. They were a sort of crude naturalists. These views became prominent almost the 8th or 9th century BC in India. And there was another school of rationalists. They were cutthroat rationalists. They believed, more or less in line with some of the modern scientists, that everything takes place not by its nature, but by accident. If you ask the question, why is water cold or why is fire hot? They would say, well, by sheer accident. The Big Bang took place by accident. The entire cosmic phenomena is an expression of an accident. You don't ask the question, why, what was the cause of this accident? It just happened. Now, there were two schools of materialists. Now, later on, from around 5th century onwards, especially after the works of Saint Augustine became prominent, faith began to push aside, or neglect reason and rationality. And practically, theology strangulated independent thought in Europe. So, see, for Plato, so they didn't agree with Plato. Plato said, knowledge is simply memory of the eternal. And going further, Aristotle said, he said we should set down rules by which knowledge could be discovered by reason. So Aristotle actually implied that the ultimate reality, the mystery of the universe, the meaning of human life, the meaning of human existence can be explained through reason. Now, this was pushing reason to another extreme. In opposition to this, from 5th or 6th century onwards, as I said earlier, from the time of St. Augustine onwards, there was an attempt to push faith to its extreme. There is no place for reason. Revealed scriptures are true just because they are revealed scriptures. They need not be proved by reason or scientific analysis. Now, and again, there was no freedom for anyone to question faith. See, faith is essentially an individual affair. You believe in something. If you rationally analyze before you believe, then that belief will not be belief. Belief to be believed should be blind. And it should be blind to reason and blind to independence of thoughts. In contrast to this, in Vedantic tradition, there was an attempt to synthesize revelation, that is theology or faith, and reason into an integral whole. In Vedantic tradition, theology, which corresponds to faith or belief, is called Shruti. Shruti actually means the revealed scriptures, which you believe in. You don't ask the question why it is so, because it was revealed by God, or it was revealed to you during your meditation, so you believe in it. So there is no place for reason. That is Shruti. But then Shankaracharya says, the greatest exponent of Vedanta, says that the revealed truth should be analyzed in the laboratory of reason. That is a unique contribution of Shankaracharya. He said, so here is Sutya Yuktya, through revealed scriptures, through belief, through faith, and also through rational analysis. You should reach experience. So Srutya, Yuktya, Swanubhutya. Swanubhuti means one's own intuitive experience. Now just think of experience. Experience is neither belief nor reason. If you drink a sweet beverage, and if you experience the sweetness, it is neither rational analysis. You don't require rational analysis to experience the sweetness of sugar. And again, it is not a matter of faith. It is not a matter of faith. It is a matter of inner experience. So experience reconciles theology and reason. Experience is the point of reconciliation of faith and reason. This is the analysis of Vedanta. These ideas were outlined, explained in many of the mystical works of both East and also West. In the great mystical works of Eckhart, or even a great conventional believer in Jesus like St. Teresa of Avila, you find the reconciliation of grace and human effort, faith and reason. Because experience reconciles. Experience answers both the questions. There is no need of rational analysis to prove the legitimacy of what you experience within, which is something which is a matter of your own intuitive inner experience. Nobody can take it away from you. And again, it is not a matter of faith, because faith implies somebody asking you to believe in something which you may not have fully experienced. That's the main problem. See, today faith is facing a lot of challenges. Many more challenges than it faced in the last century. In the last century, that is in 20th century, faith had to confront two types of challenges: ultra-nationalism and then God-denying communism, materialism. On the one hand, Nazism and fascism, which are two offshoots of ultra-nationalism, replaced God with the worship of the collective, the brute collective power of man. And the same thing happened with the advent of October Revolution in Russia. God was replaced by a mightier materialistic ideal. It is which itself became some kind of faith system. The worship of the brute collective economic and political power. But today, faith is confronting a far greater and much more subtle challenge. Faith doesn't have to confront external challenges, but many internal challenges. So many modern thinkers, great humanists, great pacifists who spread the ideals of nonviolence and international peace in the world argue that there is no place for faith in 21st century. Very often upholders of faith try to defend their doctrine on the basis of a supernatural, transcendental, original morality. God has asked you to do this, so you have to do that. So a kind of supernatural, transcendental, and nominal concept of morality. So modern humanists argue you need not go in search of a transcendental origin of morality. You need not believe in a faith system or a religion or in God to be ethical and moral. You can be humanistic. So one can be as humane as the most pious, God-fearing person who believes in a faith system, without the help of a transcendental power who dictates, who asks you to do certain things and asks you not to do certain things. So Faith is confronting a much more serious problem. In this context, I can just draw your attention to a very, very interesting aspect of Vedantic philosophy. You find in the Bhagavad Gita, at the beginning of the text, Arjuna puts a question to Krishna. See, I am in front, all around me, I am seeing friends and relatives. So I am not willing to do my duty. He came there to protect the poor, the women folk, the downtrodden, and those who are suffering, those who are tormented and tyrannized by the powerful totalitarian regime of the Kauravas. Drishtvaimam sujanam Krishna yutsum samavastidam sidanti mama gatrani mukham cha parisishyadi vebadusya sariremi roma harshasya jaile gandivam samsade hastatu chaiva paridakide. I am just quoting these verses for those who are interested. See, the 28th verse of the first chapter onwards, Arjuna starts lamenting. See, I am surrounded by my own people, so I am not willing to do my duty as a soldier. I want to go away from my field of duty. This is how the dialogue begins in the Gita. This is the first chapter, 28 verse onwards. Then, in the 18th chapter, in the 73rd verse, there is a verse. That's how the same Arjuna concludes his dialogue in the Bhagavad Gita. As you know, Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue between two great men of action, Lord Krishna and Arjuna, his disciple. So Arjuna expressed his confusion, his internal problems, and Krishna tried to answer his questions, tried to remove the doubts and conflicts from his mind. At the end of the 18th chapter, Krishna asked Arjuna a question. Are you free from your doubts and conflicts? Kachideda sudam partha taya egagrena chedasa kachidajnana sammoha pranashtaka te dhananjaya. There is a question. Krishna asked a question to Arjuna. Arjuna, now are you free from your doubts and conflicts? Are you willing? Now is the picture clear to you? Do you know what your duty is? You can find the reconciliation of reason and faith here. Which as I said, Aristotle said everything should be analyzed in the light of reason. Plato gave some importance to something which goes beyond reason. But the later materialists and scientists followed more or less the path of Aristotle. In the Gita, you find Krishna brings about a reconciliation of faith and reason. So he asked the question, Arjuna, are you free from doubts and conflicts now? In answer to this, Arjuna tells, Nashto moha smidhir labdha tot prasadat maya achyuda stidosmi gada sandeha karishe vachanandava. This is the 73rd verse of the 18th chapter. No, I am completely free from my doubts and confusions. No, I know what is my duty. I know what I am supposed to do. Arjuna followed the track of reason without spiritual wisdom. And he was lost in his own conflicts and doubts. And at the end of the 18th chapter, Arjuna says, well, I am now free from my doubts and conflicts. When Krishna taught Arjuna that no one can remain free from action in this world. Everything in this world, every atom, even the most minute particle in the world is engaged in his duties and responsibilities, in some kind of action. No one can remain physically and mentally inactive. So what you should do is to convert your action into action without desire. Action should be converted into unselfish action. Karma should become karma yoga. And Krishna taught several other spiritual ideas, Vedantic ideas, which laid the foundation of Vedanta philosophy in later centuries. Now, before Arjuna told Krishna, I am now completely free from my doubts and conflicts, Krishna makes a grand statement. There he says, I have not taught you the supreme spiritual wisdom. Now you do whatever you want. Krishna tells, I have taught you the spiritual wisdom that was transmitted by generations of great saints and sages and philosophers and spiritual personalities for thousands of years, which are being practiced by the great sages of the past. It is actually faith only. But then Krishna tells, now you use your own intelligence, your own intellect, you analyze whatever I taught you. You test whatever I taught you in the laboratory of rational analysis. And then do whatever you want. That is the instruction. In fact, the most interesting instruction by Krishna, from Krishna to Arjuna, is this: Itite jnanamakhyadam guhyad guhyataram maya vimrsya edad asheshena etha ichchasi tatha kuru. This is the 63rd verse of the 18th chapter. So, Krishna, Lord Krishna, after teaching all that he had to teach Arjuna, which helped Arjuna to clear his mind, and which liberated him from the shackles of confusion and doubts. Then he says, Itide jnanamakyadam guhyad guhyataramaya. I have taught you this supreme spiritual truth, which is practiced, which was taught only by great teachers to their chosen disciples. Now, then edat asheshena vimrsya. You completely, thoroughly analyze, rationally analyze whatever I taught you. Think over, reflect on what I taught you. Then do what you want. So the freedom to ask question, the freedom to disagree, the freedom to reject or accept as you like, was granted by Krishna after teaching the whole of Vedantic truths. So in Vedanta you find a unique synthesis of faith and reason. Now faith left alone without reason can become a caricature. That's what happens to religion. If religion loses its touch with reason, rational thinking, it could degenerate into dogmatism and a kind of doctrinaire system which is thrust upon other people, which doesn't allow you to ask questions. I can just refer to you a very interesting episode in what is supposed to be the greatest novel ever written by anybody in the world. That is Fyodor Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov. In the 5th book or the 5th chapter of Brothers Karamazov, there is that famous episode, the Grand Inquisitor. So hardly some of you may be familiar with this. It's a huge book, 1300 pages, small print, with scores of characters. Now, one of the brothers is Ivan. 3 brothers, Dmitri, Ivan, and Alexei, the saintly person. And I'm not going to those details. In the 5th book, or the 5th chapter, there is an episode which is supposed to be the supreme achievement of a creative novelist. Ivan is a rationalist who didn't believe in faith, who completely rejected the views of the Russian Orthodox Church. And Alexei Feodorov, the youngest of the 3 brothers, the youngest brother of Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov, he was very close to a great Christian saint, Father Zosima, and he had imbibed the true spirit of Jesus' teachings. So Ivan wrote a poem. It's kind of fantasy. It's pure fantasy, but it has got a deep inner meaning. And in fact, it was praised by all the great psychologists and thinkers like Einstein, William James, even the great Freud, Jung. All of them praised this particular episode as the supreme creative achievement of the greatest novelist of the world. Now, the story is this. The story goes back to the last decade of 17th century, 1680, the period of Spanish Inquisition. The cardinal who is the inquisitor heard, and man was moving among the crowd, performing miracles, preaching, teaching about love, compassion, universal kindness, and so on. So the cardinal had him imprisoned, and he was sentenced to be burnt at stake as part of the Inquisition program. It was actually Jesus Christ. Cardinal knew it. People didn't know. Jesus Christ makes his reappearance as the great lover of mankind, who returned and started performing miracles among the crowd, teaching peace and non-violence and love and compassion to the people. So the cardinal didn't like it. He had him imprisoned. He was an inquisitor, the period of Spanish Inquisition, you have to remember. Now, at midnight, the cardinal pays a visit to the prisoner in his prison. And Jesus is brought in front of him. He sits at a lower chair, and the cardinal asks him, "Why have you come back? To disturb? To interfere? We have already made a mighty empire in your name. But we are not with you. We are with him. With him is Satan." And then the cardinal says, "You were tempted 3 times. You were offered by the Satan. Satan gave you 3 promises. You rejected them. First, Satan, the 3 temptations. Satan took Jesus to the top tower. If you believe you are the Son of God, you perform a miracle. You jump down. Jesus refused. And then you are distributing bread. You turn all these pebbles and stones into loaves of bread and distribute bread. People will follow you. Why don't you do that?" That also Jesus refused. Jesus wanted humanity to exercise its freedom, not only faith, but also freedom, spiritual freedom. Jesus wanted humanity to follow his path of their own. Jesus didn't want to thrust his will upon the humanity. But Satan tempted him. You turn all these pebbles and stones and leaves into loaves of bread and distribute among the poor people. They'll be happy. They'll follow you. Jesus said no. And then, "I will give you the power to rule over the entire world. Why don't you thrust your will upon the people? They will follow you." These 3 temptations Jesus rejected. Then the cardinal says, "And we are with him. We have accepted Caesar's purple, Constantine's conversion. We have exercised power. And we have built an empire in your name, but don't interfere with our affairs." And he said, I shall have you burnt at stake tomorrow." That cardinal says. Ultimately, of course, when the cardinal found Jesus' greatness, Jesus didn't react violently. Then Cardinal let him go. That's how the story begins. So this is what happened to all religious systems in the world. The Hinduism, Buddhism, every kind of Christianity, every religion. If they hold faith and completely reject the human freedom to ask questions. Jesus wanted humanity to ask the question. That's why he rejected the 3 temptations of Satan. So you can find this reconciliation of faith and reason at the spiritual level, not the philosophical level. So faith left to itself without, and if it is completely separated from reason, it can degenerate into fanaticism and dogmatism. Reason, when it thinks itself to be almighty, when it degenerates into God denying idealism, then also it doesn't serve its purpose. When faith becomes spirituality, it gets reconciled into reason. That's what happens in spiritual life. That's why Vedanta says Srutya, Yuktya, Swanubhutya. One should first pay attention to what the faith tells you, what the faith has to teach you, and then use your reason, rational thinking, rational analysis, and then should practice and get spiritual experience. That's why Swami Vivekananda said there are 4 levels of evolution in religious and spiritual life. At the grossest level, we have rituals, then we have mythology, stories, all, and then at the 3rd level at the higher level we have philosophy, certain fundamental doctrines which may be universal, but which may also contain ideas which are not so very universal. But at the experience level, when faith becomes spirituality, when faith becomes experience, then reason and faith get reconciled. This is the teaching of Vedanta. I shall try to explain this in the light of another famous illustration from one of the Vedantic texts, the Chandogya Upanishad. You can find a great teacher who was a great sage, name was Uddalaka, and his son, small boy, Shvetaketu. It comes in the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, the famous book. Now this great sage returns home after spending several years in a foreign land. And he found that his son had not gone to school. He was already 12 years old. So the sage told him, you should go to school, and send him to school. And after 12 years of instruction, he returns home. And then, instead of becoming humble and modest and more intellectually mature, the boy had become haughty and proud of his learning. And then the father asked him, did you learn that spiritual wisdom, that truth, that which goes beyond all intellectual learning, which really makes all intellectual learning meaningful and useful, which gives wisdom, which adds wisdom to whatever information and knowledge you have gained? The boy said, no, I have not learned that spiritual wisdom, which makes my learning more meaningful, which will make me wise spiritually, not only intellectually informed. And then the father teaches the supreme wisdom, spiritual wisdom. And he tells him, this is in the light of an illustration, he tells him that every day in deep sleep, we get an experience of transcendental spiritual unity with the universal spirit. The reality is the immanent spiritual consciousness which is present, which is residing in all beings. It is also the all-pervading, omnipresent reality. It is also the transcendental reality. And in deep sleep, without our being aware of it, we become unified with this truth, because everyone has got the same experience at the level of deep sleep, dreamless sleep state, that is deep sleep state. Then the boy tells him, but then how are people not aware of this? Why do they remain unaware of this? You said that the reality is immanent in all beings, it is universal, it is all-pervading, it is transcendental. When we realize the supreme truth within, we become spiritually more awakened and we become more broad-minded and compassionate. This it goes beyond faith and also goes beyond reason. This is a spiritual experience. And we get a glimpse of this experience in deep sleep state. When I said that this spiritual experience goes beyond faith and beyond reason, what I mean is faith and reason are inadequate in explaining this experience. This experience does not go contrary. It is not in conflict with faith and reason, but goes beyond. It transcends the realms of faith and reason. So the boy said, why people are still ignorant of this? Then the father gives the example. You know, these honeybees, but honeybees collect bees from different plants and flowers, and honey is formed. So honey is practically a collection of different units of honey collected from innumerable flower plants. But when it becomes honey, it loses its individuality. They are not aware of it. Number of illustrations are given. And then another question is, the number of questions are put. I am just referring to a few. The father taught the boy, this supreme truth is a inner immanent consciousness residing in all beings. It is also the omnipresent, out of which everything in this world emerges. And then the boy was asked to bring a small fruit. The father asked him to break it. And as he went on breaking, inside, he broke the smallest seed also. Inside the seed, he found nothing. Then father told him, you said you can't see anything. You can see only emptiness, which only means your eyes cannot see. But out of that, the huge tree has come into existence. Similarly, this reality that we cannot see with our senses, with our mind, we cannot grasp, but we can only experience as our own inner self. Out of this, the whole universe has come into existence. The boy asked the question, then why is it that, why is this contradiction? The universe is so manifold, so huge, so gross. And you said this reality is the immanent reality. How can this huge universe, this manifold universe, come out of this supreme truth, which you said is the same immanent reality present in all beings and also the all-pervading reality? How can this one subtle truth, subtle reality, this gross universe come into existence? Then the father told him, look at this huge tree standing in front of the ashrama, the hermitage, the forest hermitage. This huge tree has come from plant. So the small plant, this huge tree has come. So the entire universe is nothing but a gross manifestation of this subtle supreme truth. And then ultimately, the father taught him through 9 repeated instructions, and during which the boy asked 8 times for further clarifications. At the end of this long episode, the chapter, the father told the boy, this reality is your own inner reality. It is the immanent reality residing in all beings. This can be realized first by hearing. You should hear first from a teacher, and then you must meditate. You must use your rational analysis, not the way a scientist uses in a laboratory. The method is the same, but the process is different. The scientist turns his inquiry towards the external nature of the universe. The sage turns his inquiry towards the internal nature of our own self, inner self. It's called meditation, introspection. Through this introspection, one can experience the presence of this all-pervading consciousness within us all. And that is your own self. It is the essence of the Tattwamasi Mahavakya, it is called, You are that. What you are searching for is not to be found in the external world, but it is to be realized as your own inner self within you. A scientist turns an inquiry towards external objects. One who meditates turns the inquiry towards himself, analyzes his own mind, and goes beyond the senses, the mind, intellect, and finally reaches the realm of Atman, or consciousness, or the self. That could be called by different names. When you realize this, you get the feeling, you get the feeling that you are one with the entire creation. So you are not asked to believe blindly. You may read the scriptures, you may listen to the instructions of the teacher, but that's not enough. You have to use your own rational analysis, you have to practice, and you have to reach the destination yourself. In the same Vedantic scripture, there is another, a much more picturesque illustration. The teacher gives the example of a poor man, a wanderer, who was going through a forest track, who was caught by a group of robbers, robbed of everything, and tied to a tree. Just think of a poor man walking through a deserted track in a forest, being caught by a group of robbers, robbed of everything, all his belongings, and then dragged and tied to a tree. He goes on crying and weeping. Now, the robbers have gone their way. He starts crying and weeping. Another person, a wise man, comes after some time. He listens to the groaning sound of the poor wanderer, comes to his aid, helps him, unties the cord, and releases him. And then tells him, where are you from? Well, the Upanishadic text will tell you it is from Gandhara. It's today's Afghanistan. The Chandogya Upanishad tells you. I'm not going to those details. The wanderer told him, well, I'm from that particular land, I have to go a long distance. And can you tell me which way I should follow? How I can get back to my country? Then the philosopher, the teacher, who released him from his bondage, tells him, well, this is the track you should follow. And on the way, if you find any passers-by, or any other travelers, you ask them, if you find a junction, you should ask which track you should follow. And you can eventually get back to your place, your home. Now, what does the wanderer do? He follows this track. And then what does he do? When he reaches a junction, he will be confused which road he should take. Then he will ask somebody. He will tell him, this is the place I want to go. So he will get help, instruction from different passers-by on his way home. Suppose he simply stands there and weeps and cries, he won't get back to his land. Now, he gets help from a teacher, from a philosopher, who comes to his aid, who liberates him, who unties the cord with which the robbers have bound him to the tree. That corresponds to faith. You should listen. You should read the great scriptures of the world, because they contain the teachings of the great spiritual personalities who have followed the same track, who know the forest track completely. So you should read scriptures. You should have faith. Unless you have faith, you will not be benefited by reading scriptures. If you, a rationalist or an agnostic or an atheist who takes a holy book, so-called holy book according to him, but really some respected spiritual classic. If he begins his reading without any respect for the author, then he won't be benefited. He need not believe blindly, but he should read it with all attention. And then he should think. In this story, the wanderer was asked by the philosopher to reconcile faith and reason. The wanderer should carefully listen to the philosopher's instruction. This is the track you should follow to get back to your land. He obeys and follows the track. But then eventually when he reaches a place, a junction, where he doesn't know which way to turn, he should take help from another teacher. For that, he should use his intelligence, rational analysis, his reason. And then he should also have the confidence in his own reasoning power. He should make use of his own intelligence, his own rational analysis, and he should combine his own effort. And also, he should pay heed to the words of the instructor. So, faith and reason can be combined if you follow the path of spirituality. Because true spirituality, the real purpose of faith is spiritual experience and not belief. Belief, very often, when it is completely devoid of any reasoning, it can, as I said earlier, it can degenerate into blind faith or fanaticism or dogmatism. But the same faith, when combined with wisdom, rational analysis, and sincerity of purpose, purity of life, can take you to the final goal of faith, which is also the final goal of true reason, that is spirituality. So Swami Vivekananda defined religion as spirituality. Religion is spirituality. Religion is neither faith, neither blind faith, nor blind reason. It goes beyond both. It reconciles both, because it helps you to realize the universal divine self within you, and also it helps you to realize the presence of the same universal self in everything in this world. On the one hand, it makes us spiritual. On the other hand, it makes us better and more broad-minded human beings. So, in the ultimate analysis, reason and faith get reconciled in universal spiritual humanism. Thank you. Namaskar. Om, peace, peace, peace.